Let your hands fall open in your lap, palms facing upward. Keep them there. Go still. You are not pausing by accident. Something beneath your conscious thought has been speaking for years, not in sentences, in patterns, in the people you attract, the opportunities you overlook, the tension you carry into quiet rooms, and the outcomes you somehow expect before they arrive. You have noticed it, the same fear returning, the same ending, different faces, different days. Carl Jung warned that whatever remains unconscious eventually appears in your life as fate. You may call it bad luck, timing, circumstance, yet some hidden part of you has been rehearsing the result long before you experienced it. That feeling is real. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are witnessing the force of beliefs repeated until your nervous system accepts them as instructions. They told you manifestation begins with positive thinking. But the truth is more unsettling. You are always manifesting, even when you are afraid, even when you are silent, even when your conscious mind insists that you want something else. Your deeper mind listens differently. It listens to emotion. It listens to repetition. It listens to expectation. Every word you keep repeating becomes a direction. Every fear you keep feeding becomes a destination. Every assumption you refuse to question becomes a door your future keeps walking through. But you can change the instruction. You can uncover the fear already shaping your days. You can choose new beliefs, new words, new emotional patterns, and new expectations. You can become deliberate where you were once unconscious. Stay with this journey as though you have entered a sacred room within yourself. You are not here merely to hear. You are here to recognize. Because beneath every visible result, you are already transmitting a signal. And Chapter 1 begins where you finally discover its frequency. Stop, rest your fingers gently, place it over your chest, and feel the organ obeying instructions you never consciously gave. Stay there. Your heart continues without permission. Your lungs receive air, your blood moves, and your body regulates countless processes beneath the thin surface of conscious awareness. Something powerful is already operating below thought. It never clocks out. This is the first warning. Your conscious mind is not the only voice directing your life. Beneath its plans, affirmations, and carefully chosen goals, another signal is transmitting. You may consciously desire abundance while expecting loss. You may ask for love while preparing for rejection. You may imagine success while your body quietly rehearses failure. The words say yes, the signal says no, and the deeper signal usually wins, not because you are weak, but because repetition gives it authority. What you repeatedly feel begins to sound true. What sounds true begins to guide you. Most will miss this. Joseph Murphy distinguishes between the analytical conscious mind and the emotional, habitual, automatic subconscious. Your conscious mind compares, selects, questions, and reasons. Your subconscious receives what is impressed upon it through feeling and repetition. It keeps broadcasting. Murphy teaches that this deeper level does not debate your dominant assumptions. It does not pause to ask whether an expectation serves you. It accepts the emotional instruction and begins arranging your automatic responses around it. This revelation opens the way. You can consciously repeat, "I am safe," while your chest tightens whenever opportunity appears. You can declare, "I deserve love," while scanning every conversation for the first sign of abandonment. You can say, "Money comes easily," while treating every expense like approaching disaster. Your mouth is not sovereign. The stronger transmission comes from what you emotionally accept as real. It is carried by the tension you normalize, the scenes you replay, and the conclusions you stop questioning. Your subconscious hears the frequency beneath the sentence. It hears conviction. This does not mean every passing thought becomes an event. A brief image of failure does not command the universe, and one anxious morning does not seal your future. The warning is more precise. Rehearsal creates strength. An emotionally charged assumption repeated often enough becomes an expectation. Expectation filters attention. Attention influences behavior, and behavior participates in circumstance. The sequence is quiet. Suppose you fear rejection. At first, the fear appears only during uncertain moments. Then you revisit it at night. Imagine conversations ending badly, and interpret silence as proof that distance is coming. The signal grows stronger. Soon your attention locks onto every delayed reply, altered expression, and distracted tone. Warmth passes unnoticed because danger has become the frequency you are tuned to receive. You respond by withdrawing, testing, accusing, or hiding. Then rejection appears. Perhaps the relationship weakens under the pressure. Perhaps you choose someone emotionally unavailable because their distance feels strangely familiar. Perhaps you leave before you can be left. The fear seems prophetic. But prophecy is not the mechanism. Participation is. Fear did not merely predict the pattern. Repeated expectation trained you to notice, interpret, and behave in ways that help reproduce it. The frightened self reacts. The awakened self observes. James Allen understood this long before modern language tried to explain it. He argued that hidden thought does not remain hidden. It hardens into habit, expresses itself through character, and eventually becomes visible in circumstance. Concealment changes nothing. A belief can remain unspoken and still shape your posture, timing, choices, standards, and tolerance. You do not need to announce, "I expect failure." You only need to keep postponing the action that might disprove it. Circumstance receives the transmission. Allen's deeper point is not that every hardship is your fault. Chaos tempts reaction. Wholeness shares abundance. That difference is freedom. Shame says you deserve what happened. Awareness says a recurring inner pattern may be helping a recurring outer pattern survive. Shame freezes the signal. Awareness lets you change it. Listen carefully now. Your subconscious transmission often speaks through what feels obvious. This always happens. Nothing ever works. You cannot trust anyone. There is never enough. These sound like observations. Yet repeated observations become instructions when emotion seals them. Your subconscious does not hear a detached report. It hears the reality you are prepared to keep recognizing. Why does the same disappointment keep finding you? Why do different situations produce the same feeling? Why does your future keep resembling your past? The broadcast continues. Joe Dispenza describes personality as a recurring combination of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. When that combination remains unchanged, your personal reality tends to repeat because you keep meeting each new day as the same conditioned self. Yesterday enters today. You think familiar thoughts, generate familiar emotions, and perform familiar behaviors. Those behaviors bring familiar consequences. The consequences then appear to confirm the thoughts that began the cycle. The signal verifies itself. This is why fear can feel like intuition. It has accumulated evidence, but much of that evidence was filtered through the expectation itself. The frequency selects what becomes loud and what fades into silence. You notice matching data. If your inner transmission says scarcity, you overlook resources, delay investing in yourself, and grip what you have with exhausted attention. If it says danger, you treat uncertainty as attack. If it says unworthiness, praise feels suspicious, while criticism feels accurate. Familiarity impersonates truth. Dispenza also argues that the body stores repeated emotional states until they become automatic. When stress is rehearsed daily, your muscles, breath, hormones, and nervous system begin expecting the chemistry of alarm. The body remembers, then peace feels unfamiliar. Stillness feels unsafe. A quiet day may even provoke anxiety because your system has learned to recognize tension as normal. You call it instinct. But an old frequency can enter the body so deeply that it seems like identity. You no longer say, "Fear is moving through me." You say, "I am fearful." That is the trap. The emotion becomes the broadcaster, and your conscious desires become faint interruptions. You envision a different future, but your body keeps transmitting the emotional signature of the past. Desire reaches forward. Conditioning pulls backward. This is why forcing positive words over unexamined fear rarely changes the pattern. The conscious statement may be beautiful, but the subconscious accepts what carries emotional authority. A whisper believed deeply can overpower a declaration repeated mechanically. Feeling amplifies the message. Yet this is not a sentence, it is an unveiling. The moment you detect the hidden broadcast, you are no longer completely governed by it. You can hear it. When fear is prepared to be rejected, you can notice the command before obeying it. When scarcity says, "Hold back again," you can feel the contraction without turning it into destiny. When failure says, "Do not begin," you can recognize an old transmission rather than a present fact. Recognition breaks identification. You are not the fear. You are the receiver who can choose the broadcast. Hold that identity. A receiver is not powerless before a frequency. It can stop treating noise as truth. It can become selective about what receives repetition, emotion, attention, and action. The old signal persists. At first, it may grow louder when you refuse to obey. Conditioned fear interprets change as danger because even a painful pattern can feel safer than an unfamiliar possibility. Do not confuse volume with authority. Noise is not command. Return to the heartbeat beneath your hand. It proves that invisible instructions can move physical reality inside you. It also reminds you that much of your life is being directed before conscious thought arrives. Now become present. Notice what your body expects when you imagine love, visibility, money, healing, or change. Do not judge the response. Judgment adds another fearful transmission. Simply detect it. The old New Thought writers saw that sustained inner conviction eventually seeks expression. Allen traced concealed thought into habit and circumstance. Murphy traced emotional belief into subconscious action. The sources converge. Your repeated inner state is not private in its effects. It enters your choices, your timing, your boundaries, your tone, and the opportunities you permit yourself to recognize. Eventually, the outer pattern carries its signature. But signatures can change. Right now, you stand at the point where transmission becomes conscious. You can keep rehearsing what you fear, or begin emotionally accepting what you choose. The past can broadcast automatically, or awareness can originate deliberately. Self-knowledge brightens essence. Today claims authorship. Feel your heart again. Beneath your hand, the hidden machinery continues, faithful to instructions older than this moment. Now imagine what becomes possible when your deepest assumptions stop contradicting your conscious direction. Do not turn away. The signal is already shaping what you notice, what you tolerate, what you attempt, and what you become. If the signal shaping your life is not the one you consciously chose, who or what has been broadcasting in your name? The fear you call caution may be the note to which your entire life has been quietly tuned. You hear it beneath decisions, relationships, delays, and disappointments. Yet you mistake its repetition for proof that the world is dangerous. It feels convincing. A tuning fork does not respond equally to every sound around it. It answers most strongly when another vibration matches the note already held within its structure. So do you. An old emotional pattern makes certain signals louder. A delayed message becomes rejection. A closed expression becomes judgment. And an unexpected expense becomes evidence that safety never lasts. The signal feels external. The resonance is internal. This reveals the inner fracture. You believe you are reacting to what happened today, but your nervous system is often sounding a note learned long before today. The present merely strikes what the past has already tuned. Then resonance begins. You notice the glance that confirms your insecurity while missing the warmth that contradicts it. You remember the failure with perfect clarity, yet dismiss the quiet victories as exceptions. The mind selects agreement. The body supplies conviction. Soon, you no longer feel afraid. You feel realistic. That disguise matters. Fear rarely enters your awareness announcing itself as fear. It calls itself preparation, discernment, high standards, responsibility, or the refusal to be fooled again. It sounds intelligent. You rehearse disasters and call it planning. You control every detail and call it excellence. You doubt every kindness and call it wisdom. The label changes, the note remains. Perfectionism is often fear wearing polished clothing. It insists that one flawless performance will finally protect you from criticism, abandonment, or shame. But perfection never arrives. The standard rises whenever you approach it, because the true purpose is not achievement. The true purpose is preventing the feared feeling from being struck again. Control works similarly. You attempt to arrange every response, every deadline, and every possible outcome. Yet life contains movement, and movement cannot be controlled without turning your entire existence into tension. You call that tension vigilance. Your subconscious calls it instruction. Joseph Murphy teaches that the subconscious receives ideas impressed through emotion and repetition. It does not debate the command or examine whether the command is compassionate, rational, or current. It accepts the dominant tone. A forced sentence repeated without feeling rarely reaches the depth where automatic patterns are formed. You may say, "I am safe," while inwardly preparing for betrayal, humiliation, or loss. The words declare safety. The feeling declares danger. Feeling wins. This does not mean every passing fear becomes an event. It means repeated emotional conviction trains your attention, expectations, choices, posture, and reactions to move in a corresponding direction. The process becomes automatic. You enter a room expecting rejection, so your body tightens before anyone speaks. Your voice becomes guarded, your eyes search for threat, and your warmth withdraws before warmth can meet you. Then distance appears. You receive that distance as confirmation. The tuning fork has found its matching vibration, although your own guardedness helped call the response into expression. This is not blame. Blame says you deserve the wound. Awareness says you can stop unconsciously repeating its note. The victim condemns. The witness recognizes. Louise Hay describes relationships and recurring situations as outward expressions of inner beliefs rather than disconnected accidents. This does not mean every hardship is deliberately chosen, nor does it excuse anyone who harms you. It reveals participation. If criticism lives deeply within you, criticism carries unusual force. If guilt has become familiar, you may tolerate situations that punish you because punishment sounds strangely appropriate. Familiarity impersonates truth. Resentment can keep an old injury vibrating for years. The original moment ends, but your inner system continues responding as though the strike is still occurring. The body remembers tone. Hay also treats pain as information rather than punishment. Your body is not betraying you when it tightens, withdraws, aches, or sounds an alarm. It is signaling resonance. Something has touched the stored note. The signal asks for attention, but you often answer it with suppression. You push fear downward. You demand confidence, repeat bright statements, distract yourself, and become angry whenever anxiety returns. Yet the struggle keeps your attention fixed on the very vibration you are trying to silence. Resistance keeps striking it. The more urgently you insist that fear must disappear, the more closely you monitor for its return. Every internal check becomes another reminder that danger may still be near. Now fear has authority. It determines what you watch, what you avoid, what you rehearse, and how you interpret silence. Even your war against fear becomes organized around fear. That is the trap. Suppression says the note must not exist. Discipline says you can hear the note without allowing it to direct the whole instrument. These are not equal. Christian D. Larson emphasizes the purposeful direction of your inner forces. Thought and feeling are powers requiring conscious direction, not impulses to be abandoned to habit. Direction is different from force. Force attacks the fearful note and gives it greater importance. Direction turns your attention toward a deeper emotional position and returns there repeatedly, calmly, deliberately. No inner violence. You are not trying to win an argument against yourself. You are learning which vibration has been commanding your reactions and withdrawing your unconscious loyalty from it. That takes honesty. Notice when realism carries dread. Notice when preparation becomes endless rehearsal. Notice when standards become punishment, and suspicion becomes your only form of safety. Hear the undertone. The recurring situation is not always the original problem. It may be the external cue that activates an older expectation already waiting inside you. The event strikes, you resonate. This is why changing locations, partners, jobs, or goals may bring only temporary relief. If the inner note remains unchanged, another matching cue eventually awakens it. Different setting, same frequency. You may promise never to trust again, believing distrust will prevent betrayal. Yet distrust shapes your presence, narrows your choices, and keeps you alert to everything that resembles disloyalty. Protection becomes imprisonment. You may avoid failure so completely that you also avoid the work capable of expanding your life. Fear then points to your stagnation as evidence that you were never capable. The warning fulfills itself. But the pattern is not fate. A tuning fork can be heard without being obeyed, and an emotional habit can be witnessed without becoming your identity. You are the instrument learning to hear its own note. That identity changes everything. You are not the fear. You are the awareness detecting where fear resonates. Fear reacts, awareness directs. When a familiar alarm rises, do not immediately decorate it with explanations. Feel its tone before the mind turns it into prediction. Stay present. The body may tighten, the breath may shorten, and images may arrive carrying old endings into a moment that has not yet declared itself. Do not crown them. An automatic response is not a prophecy. It is an old impression expressing itself through a system trained by repetition. Training can change. Murphy's teaching becomes practical here. The subconscious is impressed not merely by sentences, but by the emotional reality repeatedly joined to those sentences. Therefore, your task is not frantic affirmation. It is coherent impression. A quiet statement joined with even a small experience of steadiness reaches deeper than 100 declarations spoken while inwardly panicking. You begin with what your system can honestly receive. Safety may begin small. It may be one breath without forecasting, one conversation without searching for hidden rejection, one unfinished task that does not become a verdict on your worth. The new note strengthens. Larson's disciplined direction appears in these moments. You stop allowing every sensation to appoint itself as commander, and you guide thought and feeling toward the state you intend to inhabit. Not perfectly, purposefully. This is how resonance changes. You no longer feed every fearful cue with immediate belief, and the old vibration gradually loses its unquestioned command. Your world sounds different, Not because nothing difficult occurs, but because difficulty no longer automatically awakens the same identity. You meet the event before the wound tells you what it means. That is freedom. Most will never examine this layer. They will spend years correcting symptoms while the hidden note continues shaping what they notice, expect, permit, and repeat. You can hear it now. Why does the same fear return through different faces? Why does control feel safer than trust? Why does your body react before your conscious mind understands? The answer is already sounding. At this very moment, you can stop calling resonance destiny. You can listen without surrendering, feel without obeying, and direct your inner forces without attacking yourself. The note is not you. But where did that note come from, and why does your body keep sounding it after the danger is gone? You may not be reacting to what is happening now. You may be reacting to what an old lens permits you to see. The moment appears new, yet your subconscious bends its light through conclusions made long ago. You call the result reality, but it is filtered. A face changes slightly, a message arrives without warmth, a voice becomes quiet, and something inside you declares that rejection has begun. Nothing has been proven. Still, your body tightens. Your mind searches for danger, and the present moment disappears beneath the shadow of yesterday. This happens quickly. Your subconscious does not wait for evidence. It uses the lens already in place, then selects the details that agree with it. What does not match may never reach your conscious awareness. You see the frown, you miss the kindness, you remember the silence while forgetting every word of reassurance that came before it. The lens chooses. Perhaps you were criticized early, maybe affection was withdrawn when you disappointed someone, or approval arrived only when you performed correctly. Your younger mind needed an explanation, so it formed one. I am not enough. That conclusion was not examined, it was accepted. And once accepted, it began controlling how the light of later experience entered you. A neutral expression became disapproval. A delayed response became abandonment. Another person's tiredness became evidence that you had done something wrong. The present was innocent. The lens was afraid. Louise Hay teaches that your present reactions expose beliefs accepted earlier, beliefs that experience now seems to mirror back. The mirror is not condemning you. It is revealing what the lens expects to find. This distinction alters the outcome. You are not merely seeing what stands before you. You are interpreting it through an emotional conclusion that may have been formed before you could question it. The conclusion feels ancient because you have repeated it for years. Familiarity impersonates truth. That is the warning. A thought can be learned without being true, and a reaction can be familiar without being permanent. Yet whatever becomes familiar begins to feel inevitable. Why does the same fear follow you into different rooms? Why do different faces seem to deliver the same rejection? Why does yesterday keep appearing inside today? The answer hides in focus. Your subconscious scans for confirmation. If it expects rejection, it notices distance, hesitation, distraction, and silence. Each selected detail appears to prove the expectation. Then the circle tightens. The lens selects the evidence. The evidence strengthens the belief. The strengthened belief narrows the lens even further. Soon, you no longer recognize selection as selection. You call it perception. You insist that you are simply being realistic. Fear loves that word. Realism should allow all available light. Fear permits only the portion that resembles the past. It darkens what contradicts it and magnifies what supports it. The frightened mind reacts. The witnessing mind observes that antithesis matters. Reaction fuses you with the image, while observation creates enough distance to notice the lens itself. The image says, you are unwanted, but the witness says, a belief is interpreting this moment. You are the witness who can refocus perception. That identity is deeper than the wounded reaction. The wound sees through you only while you mistake its focus for your own. Once witnessed, it becomes visible as conditioning rather than destiny. James Allen traces a powerful progression. Repeated thought does not remain a private whisper. It enters character, settles into habit, and eventually participates in circumstance. What you think repeatedly becomes the angle through which you act. Action changes the picture. If you expect criticism, you may speak defensively. If you anticipate abandonment, you may withdraw before closeness can become secure. The other person then responds to your guardedness, and their response seems to confirm your original fear. You helped compose it. This is not blame. Blame says you deserve the wound. Awareness says you can interrupt its repetition. Blame freezes the picture, while awareness changes the focus. Allen's insight goes beyond positive thinking. A repeated inner pattern becomes a disposition, and that disposition shapes choices you barely notice. Those choices create consequences that appear to arrive from outside. The hidden becomes visible. This is how subconscious manifestation often works. It does not require the universe to punish you. Your expectation directs attention, emotion, posture, memory, interpretation, and behavior until life begins resembling the belief. The lens organizes light. Joe Dispenza describes another layer of this pattern. Familiar thoughts produce familiar emotions, and familiar emotions help preserve the same personality. That personality then keeps recreating a familiar personal reality. The body participates. An old fear does not live only in sentences. It lives in your breathing, your muscles, your pulse, and the speed at which you prepare for threat. After enough repetition, tension can feel more natural than peace. Calm feels suspicious. You may even search for trouble when nothing is wrong, because uncertainty lacks the emotional chemistry you know. The old lens would rather locate a familiar shadow than remain open to unfamiliar light. That is how yesterday survives. Dispenza's central warning is sharp. When thought and emotion remain familiar, the identity built from them keeps selecting a familiar future. You wake expecting the old picture, then unconsciously arrange your attention around finding it again. Expectation becomes rehearsal. Rehearsal becomes reaction. Reaction becomes evidence. Now the pattern closes. Hay points toward release by treating pain as information rather than punishment. Your reaction is showing you where the lens carries an old distortion. It is not announcing that you are broken. It is revealing focus. When a harmless silence feels unbearable, pause before assigning meaning. Notice the first conclusion that flashes through you. That conclusion often exposes the belief beneath the emotion. Do not fight it. Fighting the image can deepen its hold, because struggle keeps your attention fixed upon it. Instead, bring more light. Let the witness examine what fear excluded. Perhaps the silence means exhaustion. Perhaps the expression means concentration. Perhaps the delayed reply has nothing to do with your worth. Possibility widens perception. The old lens says there is only one explanation, and it is always the explanation that wounds you. Awareness allows other interpretations to enter without forcing false optimism. Denial rejects darkness. Awareness understands it. You do not heal by pretending that rejection never occurs. You heal by refusing to treat every unclear moment as proof that rejection is occurring again. Discernment sees what is present. Conditioning sees what it remembers. They are not equal. Your memory also passes through this lens. You may recall every humiliation with painful precision, while reassurance fades into the background. The subconscious preserves what supports its established conclusion. This can feel cruel, yet the mechanism is trying to protect you. It believes that remembering danger will prevent surprise. It keeps the lens dark, so that you will never be blinded by hope. Protection becomes confinement. A lens created during helplessness may continue operating after helplessness has ended. It does not automatically update when your strength changes. It waits for conscious recognition. That recognition begins now. When fear rises, you can separate light from interpretation. The event is what occurred. The meaning is what the lens added. Hold that distinction. A person pauses before answering. That is the event. They have discovered I am unworthy is the inherited conclusion. Your body may still react. Let it speak without letting it rule. A reaction is an echo, not a command. The past repeats, the witness refocuses. Each time you notice the old interpretation without obeying it, the lens loosens. Each time you admit overlooked evidence, more light enters. Each time you choose a response from the present, yesterday loses authority. This is real change. You are not trying to erase memory. You are ending its secret control over perception. The old picture may appear, but you no longer kneel before it. Starting now, watch what your fear selects. Watch what it ignores, enlarges, and colors. The darkest conclusion may not be revelation, it may be repetition. You are not the distortion. You are the witness who can refocus perception. And the moment you recognize the lens, the picture can no longer command you in the same way. To change the picture, you must discover who first taught the lens what darkness meant. Long before manifestation became a slogan, serious thinkers warned that every life is built twice, first as an inner design, then as a visible structure. The warning sounds simple. It is not. Your visible world appears solid, finished, and independent of you. Yet beneath repeated circumstances, recurring conflicts, and familiar disappointments, an inner blueprint is already being followed. You may not remember drawing it. That changes nothing. A blueprint does not need your daily attention to guide construction. Once accepted as authoritative, it silently determines what belongs, what fits, and what must be rejected. Your subconscious works this way. It does not stand beside you offering opinions about your life. It carries accepted premises toward expression. That is the ancient warning. The older mental science writers did not originally treat thought as wishful decoration. They treated mind as lawful. An inner premise tends to produce conditions, choices, perceptions, and reactions consistent with its nature. The premise directs. Thomas Troward built much of his mental science framework upon this distinction. There is originating intelligence, and there are the forms through which that intelligence becomes visible. Form does not originate the design. It expresses what has already been set in motion. The form follows. Your conscious faculty can compare, select, imagine, reason, and decide. Your deeper mind does something different. It receives what you repeatedly impress upon it, then works from that premise without debating its truth. The conscious drafts. The subconscious constructs. This is why fear becomes dangerous when it stops feeling like a passing emotion and becomes an accepted description of reality. I am unsafe is not merely a sentence. It is an architectural instruction. Your deeper mind obeys. It begins arranging attention around danger. You notice threatening expressions, uncertain pauses, delayed replies, financial risks, bodily sensations, and every small sign that confirms the design. Then behavior follows. You withdraw too early, speak defensively, hesitate when action is needed, and choose familiar limitations over unfamiliar possibility. The outer structure slowly resembles the buried plan. No miracle is required. Troward's great contribution is not a promise that thought commands existence like a theatrical spell. His teaching is more exacting. Thought operates through intelligible cause and effect. That makes it serious. An arbitrary universe could be blamed. A lawful process demands awareness. If a hidden premise is shaping your responses, then the structure around you may contain evidence of a design you never consciously approved. Why does the same fear keep returning? Why do different situations produce the same ending? Why does your life rebuild the room you keep trying to escape? Look beneath the structure. You may say you desire intimacy while secretly expecting abandonment. You may seek abundance while treating every opportunity as a disguised loss. You may affirm strength while rehearsing helplessness in private. The spoken desire decorates, the buried expectation designs. This is not punishment. It is correspondence. The old teaching becomes distorted when moralism enters. Unwanted conditions are then treated as proof of inner failure, impurity, or insufficient belief. Shame replaces observation. That is another trap. A blueprint can be inherited without being chosen. Childhood fear, repeated warnings, humiliation, grief, and survival habits can all leave lines on the inner page. Your subconscious may continue building from them long after the original danger disappears. Guilt repeats error. Craving magnifies lack. You are not being asked to condemn yourself for every circumstance. You are being asked to recognize the premises that influence your perception, expectation, behavior, and endurance. Recognition restores choice. Troward understood this. In The Hidden Power, he develops the principle that an inner state gains practical force when it is consciously recognized and directed. A vague thought drifts. A recognized thought becomes available for deliberate use. Attention gives authority. Until you recognize the design, you confuse it with reality itself. You say, "This is simply how life is." You do not see that you are standing inside a structure built partly from conclusions you accepted years ago. The walls feel final, but walls are downstream. The blueprint comes first. This is where the teaching was often hidden beneath mystical language. Grand phrases about invisible forces made the process sound distant and supernatural. Exaggerated promises made it sound instant. Neither reveals the core. The practical mechanism is quieter. You accept an inner premise, emotion gives it weight, repetition gives it familiarity, and your deeper mind begins organizing expression around it. Mirrors borrow images. Discord invites friction. You move between both positions every day. When you automatically obey an old design, you react. When you examine the design and choose a different premise, you begin to originate. This requires patience. James Allen also saw attainment as thought brought to completion through sustained effort. Material accomplishment, intellectual development, and spiritual maturity do not appear because a pleasant image briefly crosses your mind. They emerge when an inner vision is carried through disciplined action until it takes form. The design needs labor. Allen's point protects you from one of the most seductive distortions in modern manifestation teaching. Thought is not a substitute for effort. Thought organizes effort, sustains it and gives it direction. Fantasy avoids construction, vision guides construction. If your inner design says you are incapable, effort soon feels pointless. If it says rejection is inevitable, hesitation seems wise. If it says success will make you unsafe, self-sabotage begins to look like protection. The blueprint stays hidden. You then call the result fate. You point toward the unfinished structure and say the world refused you. Yet deep within, the construction followed an older instruction. Most will never hear this. The subconscious is not primarily impressed by what you claim once. It is impressed by what you repeatedly accept, emotionally inhabit, and treat as inevitable. Your private certainty carries more weight than your public language. It reads conviction. This explains why forced affirmations often feel powerless. The words announce one design while your emotional expectation authorizes another. The deeper level follows what feels established. Surface language requests, inner conviction commands. You cannot redraw the blueprint by pretending the current structure does not exist. Denial only leaves the old plan unexamined. You begin by observing the repeated geometry of your experience. Notice the pattern. Where do you always brace for collapse? Where do you shrink before receiving? Where do you prepare an apology before expressing a need? Do not answer with shame. Listen for the premise beneath the response. It may say that love must be earned, visibility invites attack, money creates danger, rest causes loss, or your needs burden everyone around you. That premise is structural. Once seen, it can be challenged. Your conscious faculty can compare the old conclusion with present reality, select a truer assumption, and repeatedly direct attention from that new position. The conscious chooses. The deeper mind carries. This does not mean you whisper a new phrase while continuing to live from the old design. You must recognize the new premise through action. A blueprint becomes credible when your choices begin matching it. Small actions matter. You speak before certainty arrives. You receive without immediately retreating. You remain present when the old design orders escape. Each act redraws a line. Slowly, the deeper mind learns that another structure is permitted. The new premise stops feeling like fantasy and begins feeling like identity. Expression follows acceptance. Now it builds. This is why your role is neither helpless victim nor absolute ruler of every event. Both extremes conceal the practical truth. You participate in inner causation. You are the apprentice architect of inner causation. An apprentice studies what already stands without worshipping it. An apprentice traces each visible feature back toward the plan, then learns which lines must remain and which must be removed. Your life is speaking. At this very moment, the recurring structures around you reveal assumptions seeking continued expression. Read them calmly, alter them deliberately. The architect awakens, yet a blueprint cannot become a building until something within you begins laying brick. Some of the sentences spoken over you in childhood are still growing in places you have never inspected. They entered before you knew how to refuse them, and their roots now influence what you expect from love, money, health, and your own future. Words take root. A careless warning can become a lifelong expectation. A repeated criticism can sink beneath conscious memory, remain alive in the dark, and quietly shape every choice growing above it. This is the ancient secret behind spoken blessings, sacred prayers, and repeated declarations. Your inner life is soil, and every word held with attention enters it as seed. But not every seed lives. A declaration becomes fertile only when repetition, attention, feeling, and conduct continue to nourish it. Speaking once may begin the planting, but your habitual reactions reveal which words you truly keep alive. Your mouth plants constantly. When you say that nothing works, that life is unfair, or that you always lose, the soil does not hear harmless frustration. It receives direction. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this. She treated your word as a force that turns expectation toward a result, not as empty sound floating away after it leaves your lips. Your speech chooses the crop. Shinn's warning is simple and severe. You cannot keep naming the condition you want to escape while expecting your subconscious to stop reproducing it. The fearful voice describes appearances. The awakened voice declares direction. This does not mean pretending pain is absent. It means refusing to make temporary conditions permanent through habitual speech. You can acknowledge the barren place without blessing barrenness as your destiny. The spirit finds true north. You may say you desire prosperity, then spend the day announcing shortage. You may declare that love is coming, then repeatedly insist that you are unwanted. You may pray for healing, then make your suffering the most rehearsed story in your life. The soil receives both, yet it does not give equal life to every sentence. It nourishes the seed you return to, feel into, defend through conduct, and accept as belonging to you. Repetition waters the seed. Attention keeps the soil turned toward it. Feeling gives it warmth, while conduct shows that you expect something real to emerge. Words alone are beginnings. This is why one frightened sentence repeated for years can overpower a beautiful declaration spoken twice. The issue is not that fear possesses greater authority. The issue is that fear has received more nourishment. You fed it longer. Perhaps you heard that money disappears quickly, that success makes you selfish, or that safety requires constant worry. Those sayings may still be rooted beneath your decisions, even while your conscious voice speaks of abundance. Now the conflict appears. The new seed is placed into soil already crowded by an older growth, and you wonder why the desired result struggles to surface. Why does the old sentence feel more believable? Why does the new declaration provoke resistance? Why does your life keep producing what your mouth claims to reject? Because the deeper soil still agrees with the older command. Louise Hay brings this hidden conflict into view. Her teaching does not ask you to bury an old belief beneath cheerful language. It asks you to acknowledge the contrary belief, loosen your attachment to it, and then plant words your inner life can receive. Covering is not releasing. If you say, "I am safe," while a buried conviction whispers that danger is everywhere, stronger volume will not create agreement. The declaration touches the surface, but the opposing root remains undisturbed. So you inspect the soil. You notice the sentence beneath the sentence. Under "I cannot succeed" may live, "If I succeed, I will be rejected." Under "Love never stays" may live, "If I am truly seen, I will be hurt." Recognition begins release. You do not shame the old belief, because shame only drives it deeper. You hold it in awareness, see where it came from, and stop treating it as sacred truth. The old word was planted. It was not ordained. This is the difference between force and cultivation. Force shouts at the ground. Cultivation understands what the ground has been holding and gently prepares it for different life. You are the careful sower of living words. That identity carries responsibility. You no longer scatter declarations in the morning and spend the afternoon nourishing their opposites. You make your speech, attention, feeling, and conduct agree. Agreement gives power. Joseph Murphy describes prayer in this same inward way. Prayer is not begging a distant power to place something into unwilling soil. It is the deliberate impressing of an accepted condition upon your subconscious. The beggar pleads, the sower plants. Murphy asks you to approach the desired condition as something already accepted inwardly. You relax, speak from completion, feel the quiet reality of it, then release the strain and allow repetition to deepen the impression. This is prayer as planting. The final moments before sleep are especially fertile because your conscious resistance grows quiet. In that softened state, a simple accepted declaration can descend farther than 100 strained statements spoken while you are arguing with yourself. Feeling matters there. Cold repetition leaves a seed on hard ground, but gratitude presses it inward with the warmth of possession. Give thanks before evidence. This is not a trick performed upon reality. Gratitude tells your subconscious that the desired condition belongs within your field of possibility. It changes the emotional climate surrounding the words. Still, gratitude cannot be forced. If the declaration feels impossible, choose language that loosens resistance without returning to fear. You might begin with willingness. You can accept that safety is becoming natural, that support is allowed, or that a new experience can grow here. Gentleness penetrates. Hay emphasizes consistency more than emotional violence. A calm declaration repeated daily enters more deeply than a desperate proclamation made during panic and abandoned by morning. Intensity erupts. Consistency cultivates. This is why sacred traditions repeat words. Repetition does not persuade an unwilling universe. It steadily withdraws nourishment from the old expectation and gives it to the chosen one. Each return matters. Your conduct must eventually join the declaration. If you affirm worthiness but continually accept contempt, your behavior keeps watering the older belief. If you declare provision yet refuse every opening through fear, the soil receives hesitation alongside the seed. Conduct confirms acceptance. You do not need perfect action. You need congruent movement, even if it is small. One boundary can nourish the words, "I am worthy," and one courageous request can nourish the expectation of support. The seed answers care. Watch your casual speech today. The sentences spoken without ceremony often reveal what is planted deepest, because they rise before the conscious gardener can edit them. Listen closely. When you hear the old declaration, do not panic. Catching it means its hidden growth is finally visible, and what becomes visible can be loosened. replace it deliberately. Then support the replacement with attention, feeling, and one matching act. Your soil learns through continuity. The old sentence may return many times, but return does not mean authority. It means the route has been practiced, and now you are practicing something else. Fear repeats the past. Awareness plants the future. Starting now, your words no longer wander without consequence. You speak them as living instructions, and you refuse to keep nourishing what you pray to outgrow. Choose with care. Your subconscious is receiving the tone beneath each declaration, the expectation beneath each prayer, and the identity beneath every I am. The seed matters, but the deeper mystery is how the soil decides what it will allow to live. Your mind keeps flowing toward fear for the same reason a river returns to its channel. Repetition has carved a path. The water is not choosing wisely. It is choosing what is easiest. The soul turns toward light. You may believe fear keeps returning because it is true, prophetic, or stronger than you, but fear returns because your attention has rehearsed its route. The channel deepens quietly. Each fearful thought sends another stream through the same inner passage, loosening its banks and widening its reach. Soon the current seems natural. It is not destiny. Your subconscious favors efficiency. It turns repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors into automatic movements so you do not have to consciously create every response again. Familiarity saves effort. Pain can become familiar. Tension can become familiar. Even expecting betrayal can become familiar enough that your mind treats peace as the greater disturbance. The conscious mind may protest. The deeper current continues. You say you want freedom while your attention keeps flowing through images of loss, rejection, illness, failure, or abandonment. Attention gives direction. Repetition gives momentum. Emotion gives the current force. This is why a single positive thought rarely changes a deeply conditioned pattern. One cup of clear water does not redirect a river. The old channel is already carrying years of repeated attention. Despsa argues that repeated thoughts, feelings, and behaviors condition both the brain and body to reproduce a familiar state. You do not merely remember fear as an idea. You practice it as an inner condition. Then it practices you. A fearful interpretation appears first. Your body tightens, your breathing changes, and your awareness begins searching for signs that justify the alarm. That tension makes danger feel credible. The current accelerates. You withdraw, defend, control, accuse, freeze, or delay. Your behavior then changes what happens around you, often producing the very resistance you feared. Fear predicts rejection. Tension makes you guarded. Your guarded behavior creates distance, and that distance returns as evidence that rejection was always coming. The loop closes. You call the result proof, yet the result is partly the downstream effect of the state you repeatedly carried into the encounter. The current meets its own consequences. This is not blame, it is participation. Blame chains you to shame, while participation restores your ability to redirect attention. The victim reacts, the navigator directs. You are the navigator of attention. You are not the helpless water. You are the awareness that notices where the water flows and trains it toward another course. Most of your inner direction happens before words become actions. It begins in what you repeatedly watch, anticipate, imagine, and emotionally rehearse. These are not harmless flashes when they become daily currents. Science is only beginning to glimpse this in practical terms. Repeated co-activation can strengthen neural connections, commonly summarized as neurons that fire together, wire together. What activates together becomes easier to activate again. The route becomes efficient. A small trigger can then release an entire sequence because the connections have already learned how to travel together. Thought summons emotion, emotion prepares behavior, and behavior reinforces thought. Fast feels true, that is the deception. An automatic reaction feels accurate because it arrives without delay, but speed is not proof. It is often evidence of practice. The familiar arrives first, the true must be chosen. You may recognize this when a message goes unanswered. Before anything has actually happened, the current races toward abandonment. Your stomach tightens, and the tension makes the interpretation feel undeniable. You respond from that state. Perhaps you send another message, become cold, or retreat before you can be left. The behavior disturbs the relationship, and the disturbance appears to confirm your original fear. The river returns. Why does fear feel so immediate? Why does the same reaction keep winning? Why does knowing better change so little? Because knowledge watches from the bank, while conditioning moves through the channel. Intellectual agreement can reveal the direction, but repetition determines the flow. Insight opens the possibility. Practice makes it automatic. James Allen saw this mechanism with unusual clarity. He taught that thought crystallizes into habit, and established habit contributes to outward circumstance. The inner repetition does not remain hidden forever. It becomes movement. Movement becomes pattern. Pattern meets the world and gathers results matching its direction. Allen's point is often softened into pleasant inspiration, but it is a warning. A thought repeatedly entertained is no longer merely a thought. It becomes a tendency looking for expression. Then circumstance answers. Not because every event is privately manufactured, and not because suffering proves moral failure. Circumstance answers because your habitual state influences what you notice, permit, attempt, avoid, and repeat. The current selects. When attention is trained on threat, it detects threat faster. Neutral expressions appear hostile, pauses appear suspicious, and uncertainty appears dangerous. The mind fills empty space with familiar water. You may even call this intuition, yet intuition is quiet and clear, while conditioned fear is urgent and repetitive. One informs, the other compels. Urgency demands reaction. Awareness allows direction. Christian D. Larson teaches that mental forces become more effective when attention is trained and directed rather than scattered. Scattered attention spills into every passing fear. Directed attention gathers force around a chosen course. This does not mean strain. You do not redirect the current by fighting every fearful thought. Resistance can keep your attention fixed on the very channel you intend to leave. You redirect gently. Again and again, you notice the old movement and refuse to feed it with prolonged attention. Then you give your mind a different destination. The act seems small, its repetition is not. When fear says, "This will end badly," you do not need to force certainty. You can place attention on what is present, what is known, and what action reflects steadiness now. That is a new movement. Your body may resist. It has learned the old current through repetition, and familiar chemistry can feel like identity. Calm may initially feel empty, exposed, or even unsafe. Stay present. Dispenza's central mechanism matters here. Repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors create a familiar state, so a new state must also be rehearsed. You think differently, feel differently, and act differently often enough for another route to become available. Otherwise, the old route remains easiest. A new thought alone is weak. A new thought joined with a steadier emotion gains force. When behavior follows them both, the channel begins to change. Thought leads, emotion carries. Behavior gives the movement visible consequence. Suppose you expect criticism. The old current prepares an argument before a conversation begins. Your jaw tightens, your voice hardens, and the other response becomes defensive. Now redirect earlier. Notice the first interpretation without obeying it, soften your body, and enter the exchange without rehearsing attack. A different behavior permits a different result. No magic is needed. The mechanism changes because the sequence changes. You interrupt reinforcement before it completes another circuit, but repetition is required. You cannot spend hours imagining disaster and expect 1 minute of reassurance to command the current. The subconscious learns from what is repeated with feeling. It does not reorganize itself around what you casually endorse. The old channel may remain visible for a while. Water can still enter it under stress, fatigue, or surprise. That does not mean the redirection has failed. It means you continue. Each return matters. Every time attention leaves the familiar fear and settles upon a steadier interpretation, you weaken the old inevitability. Every aligned action gives the new direction more credibility. Eventually, the pause grows. The trigger appears, but the entire sequence does not immediately follow. In that pause, the navigator becomes visible. That is your power. Not the power to control every event, but the power to stop donating automatic attention to every feared possibility. Not the power to eliminate uncertainty, but the power to meet uncertainty without rehearsing catastrophe. Starting now, watch where attention flows before asking what reality will become. The future is not shaped only by your wishes. It is influenced by the current you repeatedly strengthen through thought, feeling, and action. Choose the course deliberately. Return when you drift. The new direction becomes familiar only because you keep entering it, but the current in your mind is only half the mechanism. The rest is being carried in your body. Your body can begin tomorrow's fear before your conscious mind has finished waking up. Your eyes open, but the atmosphere is already charged. Nothing has happened yet, and still your chest tightens as if bad news has entered the room. The storm arrives first, then thought rushes in to explain it. Your mind searches for a reason that matches the pressure in your body. A memory appears, a problem surfaces, or an imagined future begins forming around the sensation. Now fear has evidence. This is how an inner climate becomes a reality-making force. The body produces a familiar atmosphere, and your attention selects everything that belongs beneath that sky. You notice the delayed message, the strange expression, the uncertainty in someone's voice. Neutral moments become warnings. Open doors look dangerous. Possibility disappears behind cloud cover. Your body remembers. It remembers through repetition, not argument. Every emotion you practice sends a message through your system, and repeated messages eventually become conditions. What begins as passing weather can become the climate you call normal. That is the warning. You may consciously desire peace while your body expects conflict. You may repeat words of abundance while your nervous system braces for loss. You may picture love while your muscles prepare for rejection. The mouth declares. The body predicts. When these signals conflict, the deeper expectation usually speaks louder. Not because you are weak, and not because you are being punished. Your body simply trusts what has been repeated more than what has been announced. Dispenza describes the body as the subconscious mind because repeated emotional states become embodied and automatic. Anxiety is no longer merely an idea. It becomes a practiced condition involving breath, posture, tension, attention, and stress chemistry. It feels like you. That feeling is deceptive. Familiarity can masquerade as identity, even when it is only conditioning. You begin saying, "I am anxious," when the deeper truth is that anxiety has become familiar weather. You are not the weather. You are the keeper of the inner climate. This fine line reshapes everything. Weather can move through you without defining you. A storm may be present, but you do not have to organize your entire future beneath it. Most never notice this. They wait for external life to become peaceful before allowing the body to soften. Yet the body's alarm influences what they perceive, how they speak, what they avoid, and which opportunities they refuse. The inner atmosphere quietly shapes the outer experience. Science is only beginning to glimpse the full meaning of this. The autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary processes such as heart rate, digestion, and stress arousal, allowing learned threat responses to appear before deliberate reasoning. Your body can therefore signal danger before your conscious mind has decided whether danger exists. The sensation comes first. A tight chest may be interpreted as proof that something is wrong. That interpretation increases alarm, which intensifies the tightness. The stronger sensation then seems to confirm the darker interpretation. The climate feeds itself. The body says danger. The mind finds danger. Soon you are not responding only to the present moment. You are responding to the atmosphere created by previous moments. Yesterday's fear becomes today's bodily forecast, and today's forecast influences what you expect from tomorrow. This is subconscious manifestation at its most intimate. Before events take form, your body is already rehearsing their emotional meaning. It is preparing to recognize a future that resembles the past. Expectation filters perception. Under an atmosphere of rejection, silence looks hostile. Under an atmosphere of scarcity, spending feels threatening. Under an atmosphere of guilt, receiving feels undeserved. The same world appears different. Murphy taught that subconscious intelligence directs countless bodily activities without conscious supervision. Your conscious attention does not command every heartbeat or supervise each digestive movement. A deeper intelligence keeps working while your surface mind looks elsewhere. That power is immense, yet the subconscious receives more than verbal instructions. It responds to impressions carrying emotion, repetition, and acceptance. Murphy therefore emphasizes that words without feeling rarely penetrate deeply. Cold words evaporate. You can say, "I am safe," while gripping the bed and imagining disaster. The sentence speaks peace, but the atmosphere speaks threat. Your subconscious responds to the total impression, not merely the preferred phrase. Feeling gives words weight. This is why a familiar emotional atmosphere can overpower conscious intention. Intention may appear for 5 minutes. The body has practiced the old climate for years. Repetition has momentum. Peace can even feel suspicious. When tension has been normal, relaxation may register as unfamiliar. Because the body often confuses familiarity with safety, it may resist the very calm you consciously desire. The old climate calls. You sit in silence and restlessness rises. You receive kindness and suspicion appears. You approach success and your stomach contracts, as if expansion itself were dangerous. This is not sabotage. It is protection operating from an outdated forecast. The body expects the conditions it already knows, even when those conditions are exhausting. It prefers a known storm to an unknown clear sky. Life assumes forms the creator conditions. That antithesis is the doorway. Reaction repeats the atmosphere already stored. Conscious creation begins when you remain present long enough to introduce another bodily possibility, not just another thought. You teach the body through experience. The jaw softens, the breathing becomes unforced, the shoulders descend without waiting for the world to grant permission. Small changes matter. You are showing your subconscious that alertness is not required in every moment. You are allowing calm to exist before circumstances justify it. This is how a new expectation enters the body. Practice becomes climate. Dispenza frames this as generating the feeling of the desired future before it arrives. The essential insight is not fantasy. It is that your body must become familiar with a state beyond its emotional past. The past predicts, presence introduces. If you desire freedom, your body needs moments of unguarded spaciousness now. If you desire love, it needs practice receiving warmth without searching for the hidden cost. If you desire abundance, it needs contact with enoughness before every external number changes. Embodiment seals the impression. Murphy's approach follows a similar principle. In a relaxed state, especially near sleep, you impress the desired condition as already real, feel its truth and release it. The relaxation matters because it quiets resistance and gives the subconscious a different atmosphere to absorb. You stop begging. Begging declares distance. Gratitude declares reception. Yet none of this requires you to attack the old pattern. Force only creates more inner pressure. You cannot establish peace by waging war against your own body. Compassion changes the air. Louise Hay connects long-held emotional patterns with bodily experience, but her deeper invitation is release rather than blame. Pain is not a verdict against you. It is information asking for attention. Shame condemns. Awareness listens. This matters because self-blame recreates the storm you are trying to end. You notice tension, criticize yourself for being tense, and then create more tension through criticism. The inner atmosphere grows heavier. Choose gentleness instead. Place attention on the sensation without immediately building a story around it. Let tightness be tightness before calling it danger. Let heat be heat before turning it into prophecy. The interpretation can soften. You are not denying the signal. You are ending its automatic authority. The body can speak without becoming the ruler of every meaning. This is participation. Hay's emphasis on forgiveness also belongs here. Resentment keeps an old atmosphere circulating long after the original moment has passed. Forgiveness does not approve what happened. It releases your body from having to reproduce the same weather. The prison opens inward. Each time you practice a different embodied state, you alter what feels normal. Calm becomes less foreign, receiving becomes less threatening, the sky begins clearing. Do not wait for perfect peace. Give the body brief, repeated evidence that another condition is possible. A few honest moments of safety can teach more than hours of strained affirmation. The body learns weather. It learns through what returns. It learns through what you repeatedly feel while imagining tomorrow. And right now you are deciding which atmosphere receives rehearsal. Your future notices. Which emotional climate are you teaching your body to expect? Which outcomes become believable when that climate feels normal? If emotion is the atmosphere, what determines which possibilities become visible beneath that sky? The world may be answering a question you do not realize you keep asking. Beneath your words, expectation stands before a mirror, waiting for life to reflect its hidden face. You may ask for love while expecting abandonment. You may seek opportunity while preparing for refusal. The request is spoken, but the expectation is acted out. The mirror sees both. This is the warning. Your subconscious does not merely store old fears in some sealed chamber. It carries them into your posture, your timing, your attention, and your choices. Then life responds. The reflection can look like fate because you rarely see the movement that comes before it. You notice the rejection, but not the guarded tone. You remember the closed door, but not the doors you never approached. Expectation moves first. Imagine believing rejection is inevitable. You enter a conversation already braced against pain, even while telling yourself that you are open. Your voice tightens, your eyes drift away, and your words become careful. You explain too much. You test affection before trusting it. You withdraw at the first ambiguous signal, then watch the other person become uncertain. Now the mirror turns. The other person may not sense your hidden history. They respond to what reaches them now. Distance, suspicion, tension, or a demand for reassurance they cannot understand. Their response then appears to confirm your original belief. The fear says, "See," yet the reflection has concealed the sequence. You expected rejection, behaved defensively, received caution in return, and interpreted that caution as proof. What began as a premise ends as evidence. This is mental causation. Troward saw that an accepted premise tends to generate consequences matching its nature. He was not describing a childish fantasy in which every passing thought commands the universe. He was pointing toward the creative authority of what you inwardly accept as true. A premise organizes action. If your accepted premise is that your voice has no value, you hesitate when the moment comes to speak. You soften clear ideas, apologize before offering them, and abandon them when challenged. The room then overlooks what you never fully presented. The premise becomes visible. If you assume love must be earned through exhaustion, you may tolerate unequal relationships and call your endurance devotion. You give beyond your limits, hide your needs, and choose those who gladly accept the arrangement. Eventually, resentment appears in the glass. The mirror is exact. It does not say that every hardship is self-created. It does not erase injustice, illness, chance, economic pressure, or another person's freedom. It reveals where your assumptions participate in what you notice, attempt, tolerate, and repeatedly choose. Blame condemns, awareness investigates. This distinction protects the truth. An external pattern is information about your inner assumptions, but it is never permission to deny real conditions. You can recognize an unfair barrier while also noticing the expectation that keeps you from approaching every available opening. Both can be true. Louise Hay uses the mirror principle to show how recurring relationships and emotional reactions reveal beliefs seeking recognition. The recurring face may change, yet the same wound keeps appearing behind it. Different circumstances repeat the same emotional message. You know the message. I am unwanted. I am unsafe. I must prove myself. These beliefs rarely announce themselves directly. They appear as repeated scenes, familiar disappointments, and strangely predictable endings. The reflection speaks indirectly. Hay's deeper invitation is not to worship the reflection, but to use it. When your reaction is intense, the mirror is showing more than the present moment. It is exposing an old conclusion that still expects obedience. Most will miss this. They polish the glass. They change partners, jobs, cities, routines, and appearances without questioning the belief standing before the mirror. For a while, the image changes. Then the pattern returns. Why does the same wound wear different faces? Why does your fear keep finding evidence? Why does the ending feel familiar before it arrives? Because expectation selects. Science is only beginning to glimpse this through expectancy effects and confirmation bias. Expectations can alter perception and behavior, while belief-consistent evidence becomes easier to notice and remember. The mirror is not supernatural control. It is organized attention meeting repeated conduct. You find what fits. When you expect betrayal, neutral delays become suspicious. Warm gestures seem temporary, while one forgotten message becomes unforgettable. Your attention gathers fragments that support the feared conclusion. Contrary evidence fades. This does not mean you imagine every warning sign. It means expectation influences which signs become vivid, which interpretations feel natural, and which memories remain available. The belief edits the reflection before you consciously examine it. Then behavior follows. The frightened mind reacts. The conscious mind reads. That is your identity here. You are the reader of reflected belief. You are not the helpless image trapped inside the glass. You are the awareness capable of seeing what the reflection reveals. Now you see. James Allen argues that thought progressively expresses itself through conduct, character, and conditions. Inner thought does not remain abstract. Repeated thought shapes repeated behavior, and repeated behavior hardens into a way of meeting life. Character carries the premise. A belief rehearsed for years becomes a tone you no longer hear. It becomes the choice you call instinct, the boundary you never set, and the opportunity you dismiss too quickly. Conditions then gather around these repeated responses. The invisible becomes visible. Allen's teaching is often misunderstood as accusation. It is actually an invitation to recover participation. Consciousness assigns roles. Acceptance frees power. Shame freezes the image. Awareness changes it. Suppose you believe success invites punishment. You may work hard until recognition approaches, then delay, distract yourself, or create unnecessary conflict. When the opportunity disappears, you call it bad luck. But the mirror remembers. Suppose you believe peace is temporary. During calm periods, you scan for disruption, interpret silence as danger, and provoke certainty from uncertainty. Conflict feels painful yet familiar. Familiarity wins quietly. Your subconscious often prefers a known wound to an unknown freedom. It has practiced the old expectation so thoroughly that contradiction feels unsafe. A loving response may seem suspicious simply because it does not match the accepted premise. So you test it. You may demand proof, reject reassurance, or withdraw to see whether someone follows. The test itself introduces strain. When strain produces distance, the belief claims victory. The mirror answers behavior. This is why changing language alone rarely changes the reflection. You can repeat that you are worthy while continually choosing what insults your worth. The spoken belief and the enacted belief stand together before the glass. Conduct reveals allegiance. To read the mirror, notice repetition without immediately defending it. Watch what you expect before a meeting, what you assume after silence, and what you tolerate after disappointment. The crucial evidence often appears seconds before your habitual response. Stay there. That brief moment exposes the premise. You feel the urge to over-explain, disappear, accuse, surrender, or seek impossible reassurance. Instead of calling the urge truth, recognize it as an old expectation asking to be reenacted. Recognition creates space. Then choose one behavior that contradicts the feared premise. Hold eye contact. Speak plainly. Allow a pause without filling it with apology. Small changes matter. The new action may not transform every circumstance. It does something more immediate. It stops feeding the old reflection. You are no longer presenting the same belief and demanding a different image. The glass changes slowly. At first, resistance appears. Hay understood that looking into your own eyes with approval can awaken everything within you that rejects approval. That resistance is not failure. It is the belief exposed. You do not need to attack it. You need to stop treating it as prophecy. Its origin may belong to childhood, but its continuation depends upon present repetition. The past supplied it. Today can withdraw consent. Right now, the mirror is already receiving your posture, your attention, your interpretation, and your next choice. Stand before it consciously. Let your conduct express the premise you now choose to accept. You are the reader. Once the reflection exposes the belief, will you argue with the mirror, or change what stands before it? You cannot leave a territory you refuse to map. Yet the territory you avoid is often the exact place your subconscious keeps returning you to. It feels accidental. The same silence appears after intimacy. The same rejection follows hope. The same financial pressure returns just when relief seems near, but repetition leaves coordinates. Your subconscious follows an inner map drawn from conclusions you may no longer remember making. Those conclusions become roads, borders, warnings, and destinations. You call the destination fate because you cannot yet see the map. Look closer. You are not searching for everything wrong with your life. That would turn discovery into accusation. You are choosing a single recurring situation and studying it with the precision James Allen brought to the workings of thought. Allen invites you to observe how thought becomes habit and how habit shapes circumstance. He does not ask you to condemn the territory. He asks you to understand its laws. That clarity carries consequence. Shame says, I caused every wound. Awareness says, a hidden premise influences where I keep going. Shame attacks the traveler. Awareness corrects the map. Begin with one repetition, not your entire relationship history, not your whole financial life. Choose a specific scene that has occurred more than once, such as sending a message and receiving no reply for several hours. Now write the facts. Facts are what a camera could record. You sent a message at noon. No reply appeared by 6. You checked the screen 14 times and cancelled your evening plans. Stop there. Do not write that you were ignored. Do not write that abandonment is manifesting again. Those are interpretations placed over the territory. This first separation is powerful. The event exists. Then your subconscious marks it with meaning. The territory is what happened. The map is what you believe it means. Keep them separate. Your subconscious moves quickly because its map is old. Before your conscious mind examines the scene, your body has already recognized a border crossing. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, or grows hot. Record that sensation plainly. Then record the immediate thought. It may be, here it comes again, or I knew this would happen. Next comes impulse. Perhaps you want to send another message, withdraw affection, spend money, eat, accuse, apologize, or disappear. Then record the behavior that follows. You send 5 messages, become cold, abandon your task, or rehearse the coming rejection. No judgment. You are gathering coordinates. Thought, sensation, impulse, and behavior reveal the route your subconscious takes from trigger to outcome. The route is usually fast. That speed makes it appear inevitable. Once written, however, the sequence slows enough for you to see where direction can change. This is Allen's disciplined study made intimate. By observing your thought processes, you discover the law beneath the repetition. A thought repeatedly accepted becomes a familiar road, and a familiar road becomes the path taken without deliberation. Habit follows belief. Circumstance follows habit. Now move beneath the immediate thought. Complete this sentence in writing. If this happens, it means, write the first answer. If this happens, it means I am being ignored. Then use the same sentence again with that answer beneath it. If I am being ignored, it means I do not matter. Continue. If I do not matter, it means I am unwanted again. If I am unwanted, it means I will always be left. There is the destination. The surface event may concern a delayed message, a missed payment, a critical remark, or an unanswered request. But the hidden destination is often an identity. Unwanted, unsafe, powerless, defective, invisible, or destined to fail. Your subconscious does not merely react to the event. It follows the meaning assigned to the event. The event is a point on the territory, but the feared identity is the destination printed on the map. You are the cartographer of recurring experience. This does not mean you invented every hardship. It means you can identify the premise directing your responses within hardship. Blame imprisons. Participation restores direction. Louise Hay's teaching points toward the belief beneath a recurring condition. Her emphasis is not punishment. It is compassionate recognition, followed by a conscious choice that no longer repeats the old conclusion. Approach the origin gently. Write the earliest moment you remember learning this meaning. Do not force a perfect memory. Record the first scene that carries the same emotional coordinates. Perhaps affection was withdrawn when you made a mistake. Perhaps silence meant danger in your home. Perhaps achievement brought approval, while rest brought criticism. A child draws absolute maps. A single painful event can become "this is how love works." A repeated atmosphere can become "safety never lasts." A frightened conclusion can become "I must control everything or lose everything." That conclusion protected you then. It may have helped you anticipate moods, avoid punishment, preserve attachment, or create a small sense of control. Forgiveness begins when you recognize that the map was drawn for survival, not sabotage. Honor its origin. Refuse its authority. The past explains the mark. It does not prove the destination. Now divide history from present truth. Write what your adult awareness knows today that your earlier awareness could not know. You may know that delayed replies have many causes. Disagreement does not equal abandonment, and uncertainty is not danger. Be specific. Then write the evidence that contradicts the old belief. Record the times you were supported, chosen, protected, paid, welcomed, or able to recover. Your subconscious notices repetition, so give it accurate evidence to notice. This is not forced positivity. It is corrected cartography. The old map exaggerates danger and erases resources. It enlarges every threatening landmark while leaving safety unnamed. Your task is not to paint paradise over the page. Your task is accuracy. Troward's hidden power teaching turns on conscious recognition. A premise operates as hidden power while it remains unseen, but recognition places its direction within reach. What runs beneath awareness governs automatically. What enters awareness can be deliberately redirected. The unconscious premise commands. The conscious mind revises. Now write the action that becomes possible without the belief. If silence no longer means you are unwanted, perhaps you continue your evening instead of pursuing reassurance. If criticism no longer means failure, perhaps you remain present and ask for useful detail. Keep it concrete. A new destination requires a visible next road. Your subconscious learns not only from words, but from the action that follows those words. Each different response redraws a small section of the map. Do not demand instant perfection. An old road remains familiar even after you discover it leads somewhere harmful. Familiarity is not truth. Walk differently anyway. The next trigger may still tighten your chest. The old thought may still appear. But now you can name the route before obeying it. That moment changes everything. You can say, "This is the old map." Then return to the observable fact, feel the sensation without building a prophecy, and choose the action available to your adult awareness. Starting now, recurrence becomes information. The pattern that once accused you becomes the mark that reveals where revision is needed. You stop wandering inside an unnamed fear and begin reading its coordinates. Most will never examine this closely. You will. What destination has your hidden premise chosen? What road becomes possible when that premise loses authority? Now that you can see the old destination, how do you give the subconscious somewhere new to go? A new future is not wished into shape. It is heated, struck, tested, and lived until it can hold its form. Your subconscious is already working at the furnace, shaping whatever assumption you repeatedly place inside it. That is the warning. You may consciously desire love while secretly expecting abandonment. You may ask for prosperity while rehearsing loss, humiliation, and scarcity every night. The furnace does not obey the wish you announce. It responds to the material you heat. Most will miss this. They keep striking cold metal, repeating words while the body remains clenched in resistance. Then they call the practice false because nothing bends. But the metal was never ready. Before you impress a new assumption, you must reduce bodily urgency. Relax your jaw, let your shoulders descend, soften your abdomen, and allow the breath to become quieter without forcing it. Do not rush this. A frightened body treats every new statement as a threat or a lie. If panic is still blazing, your chosen words collide with the old expectation instead of entering beneath it. You are not forging then, you are fighting. The fighter resists, the blacksmith directs. Joseph Murphy teaches that the subconscious becomes more receptive when the conscious mind is relaxed and less argumentative. The idea is simple but severe. What you accept as presently real enters more deeply than what you merely hope might happen. Relaxation opens the furnace. Remain still until your body no longer demands immediate escape, defense, or proof. You are not required to become perfectly peaceful. You only need enough inner space to stop wrestling with every sentence you speak. Then name the old metal. Do not say, "I am rejected." That language welds the condition to your identity. Say instead, "I learned to expect rejection." Feel the difference. The first statement declares a permanent self. The second identifies a learned pattern. Identity feels immovable. Learning can change. This distinction is decisive. You are not denying what happened. You are removing its authority to define what happens next. The old assumption becomes material you inherited, not the shape you must preserve. Why did you keep expecting the wound? Why did familiar pain feel safer than unfamiliar peace? Why did your own speech keep returning the old metal to the fire? Now wisdom speaks within. The subconscious favors what is familiar because familiarity has been rehearsed. It does not pause to judge whether the rehearsal is kind, fair, or useful. Repetition gives the pattern heat, while emotion makes it pliable. So choose carefully. Your replacement must be present tense, emotionally credible, and meaningful in behavior. "Everyone adores me and nothing can hurt me" may sound powerful, but your inner resistance may reject it immediately. Grand words often cool too quickly. Choose believable strength. You might say, "I am learning to expect respect and I respond as someone worthy of it." Or, "I am becoming steady with money and I make clear decisions." The words describe an inner reality that can be felt and enacted now. That matters. The old assumption says the world must change before you do. The new assumption says your inner position changes before the evidence arrives. The victim waits for proof. The creator supplies direction. You are the blacksmith of a chosen inner state. This does not mean controlling every event. It means refusing to surrender your inner posture to every event. You decide which expectation receives heat, attention, feeling, and repeated form. Words begin the shaping. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasizes that speech is not empty decoration. Your words repeatedly energize a direction. Each time you say, "Nothing ever works for me," you return the unwanted shape to the furnace. Listen closely today. Notice the phrases you use without thinking. "I always get ignored." "Money disappears." "Something bad is coming." These are not harmless descriptions when they become daily declarations. They are repeated blows. You do not need to police every syllable with fear. Fear would only become another old assumption. You simply stop speaking language that continually reinstalls the condition you are releasing. Refuse the old script. Replace it without strain. "That was my expectation, but I am choosing steadiness now." This does not pretend the past never existed. It prevents the past from issuing fresh instructions. Speech either hardens or reshapes. Complaint rehearses the unwanted. Deliberate language strengthens the chosen direction, yet words alone are insufficient. Larson stresses the union of directed thought, sustained feeling, concentration, and constructive action. Idle wishing scatters the force. Focused feeling gathers it, and action gives the chosen assumption a visible edge. Bring in feeling, not wild excitement, not emotional theater. Reach instead for relief, steadiness, gratitude, or quiet certainty. These feelings are often credible enough to enter where exaggerated enthusiasm cannot. Relief is powerful. It tells the body that the danger is no longer absolute. Steadiness tells the subconscious that another response is available. Gratitude lets the new assumption feel received rather than desperately pursued. Now form one scene. Keep it brief and sensory. If your chosen assumption concerns respect, imagine hearing a trusted voice say, "You handled that clearly." Feel your shoulders loose, hear the exact tone, and sense the quiet satisfaction afterward. Do not build an epic. A few seconds are enough when the scene naturally implies that change is already occurring. Murphy's method rests on this acceptance of an idea as present reality, especially while the mind is relaxed. The scene is heated by felt reality, not by length. Return to it gently. Near sleep, the conscious guard grows quieter. The day releases its grip, and the subconscious becomes easier to impress. This is where you place the scene into the furnace. No begging. Begging announces absence. Acceptance announces direction. Desire strains toward the future, while assumption begins occupying the present. See the scene once. Let yourself feel the smallest believable degree of relief, then release it. You do not remain awake, striking the metal all night, inspecting it after every blow. Trust the heat. When you wake, do not immediately retrieve the old identity. Before reaching for the noise of the day, relax again and revisit the same brief scene. Give it feeling, then rise. The morning blow matters. You are meeting the subconscious before yesterday's momentum fully returns. A few deliberate moments can establish the form you intend to carry. But the furnace alone does not finish the work. The metal must be tested. During the day, complete one small action consistent with the replacement assumption. If you are learning to expect respect, speak one clear boundary. If you are becoming steady with money, look calmly at one account and make one constructive choice. Keep it small. The action is not payment demanded from the universe. It is congruence. Your body learns that the new assumption is not merely language spoken in darkness. Larson understood this union. Thought gives direction, feeling gives force, and action gives embodiment. Remove any part and the shaping weakens. Fantasy avoids action. Assumption produces it. The old state will protest. It may send familiar thoughts the moment you behave differently. That protest does not mean failure. It means the established form is being challenged. Do not reheat it. When the old sentence appears, name it without merging. I learned to expect rejection. Then return to your chosen words, your brief scene, and the next congruent act. Strike again. This is how a state becomes natural. Not through one dramatic declaration, but through repeated contact between word, image, feeling, and conduct. Each contact gives the new form greater strength. Consistency defeats intensity. You may see no outer proof at first. That is when most abandon the work and reinstall the former assumption through speech. They look at unchanged conditions and pronounce the new state impossible. Do not join them. The first alteration is quieter. Your jaw releases sooner. Your speech becomes cleaner, and your choices stop asking permission from the fear that once governed them. That is evidence. Starting now, prepare the furnace before you place anything inside it. Relax, name what was learned, speak what is becoming true. Feel its steadiness and live one act that agrees. You are not the metal, you are the blacksmith. When the metal begins to change, the first evidence will not necessarily appear in the world. It will appear in the hand holding the hammer. The earliest proof of change is so quiet that the old you may dismiss it as nothing. Something provokes you, the familiar emotion rises, and yet your reaction does not immediately follow. There is a pause, it may last one breath. Nothing outside you celebrates it, and no dramatic sign appears to confirm what has happened. Yet in that small interval, your inner compass begins turning. This is the first evidence. Before the trigger and the reaction seem fused together, a word becomes anger, silence becomes rejection, delay becomes disaster. You do not consult yourself. You simply obey the direction fear has memorized. Now space appears. That space contains choice. You can still react as before, but the reaction is no longer inevitable. The old direction remains visible, yet it no longer feels like the only road available. Most people miss this. They search for sudden money, perfect relationships, impossible coincidences, or constant emotional peace. They want the outer world to announce that the inner world has changed. But genuine transformation usually begins before circumstances can display it. The compass turns first. Dispenza describes change as becoming less defined by memorized emotional reactions. Your body has learned certain emotions so thoroughly that they seem like identity. Anxiety feels like foresight. Resentment feels like protection, and tension feels like responsibility. But they are learned directions. A trigger activates the old emotional state, and your mind immediately produces thoughts that justify it. Then those thoughts intensify the emotion, and the emotion demands familiar behavior. The compass points backward while you call it instinct. The cycle feels personal. It is not destiny. It is repetition made intimate through years of obedience. When you interrupt that obedience even briefly, you begin becoming capable of choosing a different state. That is real change. Science is only beginning to glimpse this through neuroplasticity. Repeated thoughts, emotions, and actions strengthen certain pathways, while new repetitions support new patterns. You do not transform by having one beautiful insight. You transform by ceasing to rehearse the same inner direction. Repetition sets direction. This is why an old thought may still appear after deep inner work. Its appearance does not mean you have failed. A compass can tremble near an old bearing before settling toward a new one. Authority is the difference. The old thought says, "You will be abandoned." You notice it without arranging your behavior around it. The old emotion says, "Defend yourself now." You feel its pressure without giving it command. It speaks. You choose. Voices create worlds. Feeling drinks water. One is driven by the remembered signal. The other reads the signal and decides whether it deserves movement. You are not the reaction. You are the traveler guided from within. This identity changes everything because you stop demanding that every disturbing thought disappear. You no longer make inner silence the price of freedom. You measure freedom by what receives your obedience. That standard is stricter. Perfect positivity can become another form of fear. You monitor every thought, panic over every doubt, and imagine that one dark moment can destroy everything. The search for control then points you toward the very anxiety you are trying to escape. Mastery is steadier. Christian D. Larson emphasizes the persistent, constructive use of your mental forces. The emphasis is persistence, not spectacle. Mastery reveals itself as increasing steadiness, especially when circumstances tempt you to surrender your direction. Anyone can feel powerful briefly. The deeper sign appears when the day goes wrong and you recover sooner. You still feel disappointment, but you do not build a home inside it. You still become angry, but you do not let anger compose the next 3 days. You return faster. At first, recovery takes weeks, then it takes days. Eventually, the same event that once consumed you may disturb only an hour. The event has not necessarily changed. Your relationship to your own inner direction has. This is measurable. You apologize sooner. You speak more clearly. You stop sending the message written at the peak of fear. You wait until the needle settles before choosing where your feet will go. Conduct reveals direction. James Allen connects thought with conduct and character. He does not leave thought floating as a private fantasy. Inner tendencies complete themselves through action, and repeated action gradually reveals who you are becoming. Behavior is evidence. You may claim that you expect respect, but your boundaries disclose the expectation you actually carry. You may repeat that you deserve peace, but your choices reveal whether chaos still feels more familiar. The mouth declares. The life confirms. This is not punishment, it is instruction. Your conduct shows where the compass currently points, without shame and without disguise. Once you see the bearing clearly, you can stop pretending that words alone have changed it. Then relationships shift. You communicate what you once swallowed. You refuse what you once tolerated. You stop translating contradiction into potential and stop calling inconsistency love. Some connections deepen. Others become strained because the old arrangement depended upon your confusion. When you no longer over-explain, chase, rescue, or accept divided treatment, the relationship must meet your new direction or reveal its own. That revelation can hurt. Do not confuse pain with regression. Sometimes the compass turns correctly while your emotions grieve the road you can no longer travel. Loss does not always mean misalignment. Sometimes loss is the cost of becoming congruent. The false self bargains. The true self aligns. Opportunities change for the same reason. You notice what you previously filtered out, and you reject what once matched your hidden expectation of scarcity. Your decisions begin carrying a different message because you no longer approach every opening as a desperate rescue. You stand differently. This affects what you ask for, what you accept, and what you complete. Allen's teaching becomes practical here. Altered thought becomes altered conduct, and altered conduct develops character. Character then influences the circumstances you repeatedly enter and sustain. Not every event obeys you. You do not control every delay, departure, accident, or decision made outside you. Inner transformation is not a demand that existence remove all uncertainty. It is the power to stop making uncertainty your master. Your direction remains yours. Why do you recover sooner? Why do old thoughts feel less convincing? Why does contradiction become harder to tolerate? Because the compass is changing. You are no longer organized around the same fear. Its voice may remain audible, but its emotional authority is weakening. It can advise retreat without forcing your movement. This becomes visible in ordinary moments. You rest instead of proving, you ask instead of assuming, you leave instead of negotiating against your own clarity. Small choices accumulate. Larson's insistence on constructive persistence matters because a new direction becomes trustworthy through use. Each aligned choice makes the next choice more available. Each recovery teaches your nervous system that discomfort does not require self-betrayal. Steadiness replaces drama. You no longer need a single spectacular event to certify your growth. You recognize transformation through greater congruence. Your words, expectations, boundaries, and actions begin pointing together. There is less inner division. You become believable to yourself. That trust is precious. It forms when you repeatedly do what your deeper clarity has already shown you. You stop promising yourself a new life while continuously walking in the old direction. The contradiction ends. This does not mean you never stumble. It means stumbling no longer becomes an identity. A difficult morning does not become a ruined week, and one fearful choice does not become proof that change is impossible. You correct course. That is progress. Not perfect control, but conscious return. Not endless positivity, but decreasing obedience to fear. Not a life without storms, but a direction the storm cannot choose for you. Watch closely today. Notice the breath before the answer, the boundary spoken without apology, and the thought that passes without becoming an order. These are not minor moments. They are the inner instrument responding to a new command. Right now, trust the quiet evidence. You are the traveler guided from within, and your repeated choices reveal the direction you have accepted. When the compass turns, the road does not command you to walk, but every direction of your former life becomes impossible to mistake. Your future is already being woven in the ordinary thought you are most tempted to overlook. Not the thought you announce, but the quiet one you accept while washing a cup, closing a door, or lying awake. That thread matters. You have been taught to wait for a grand declaration. You imagine transformation arrives when you make a perfect promise, feel absolute certainty, or finally become fearless. It rarely happens that way. A life is woven through repetition. Attention selects the thread, interpretation colors it, speech tightens it, emotion presses it into place, and action binds it to the pattern. Then you call it reality. This is why unconscious fear is so persuasive. It does not need to defeat you in one dramatic moment. It only needs to enter ordinary moments unnoticed. Fear loves repetition. A fearful thought appears. You treat it as prophecy, speak from it, feel its conclusion, and act as if its warning has already become law. The thread passes through again. Soon, the pattern feels permanent because you no longer remember weaving it. You see only the finished section and assume it came from somewhere beyond you. Most will miss this doorway, but you notice now. The warning is not that every painful event is your creation. Trauma is not proof of spiritual failure. Injustice does not become acceptable because consciousness has power. Responsibility is not blame. Blame says you deserved the wound. Responsibility says the wound will not secretly hold the thread forever. Blame imprisons. Responsibility restores participation. This distinction is sacred. You do not control every event, every body, every decision, or every force moving through this world. You do participate in what events come to mean within you, what you repeatedly expect, and what you practice next. The event is not authorship. Your continued relationship with it is where authorship quietly returns. Take back the thread. Troward locates hidden power in the conscious recognition of inner causation. The power remains hidden while you believe your inner patterns are merely passive reactions, with no constructive direction available. Recognition changes the weave. You begin to see that consciousness is not an empty witness. It gives direction through sustained attention, accepted meaning, and chosen expectation. The unconscious reacts. The conscious directs. This does not grant domination over existence. It grants something more immediate, the ability to stop treating every inherited fear as an unquestionable command. That is real power. Why does the same fear keep returning? Why does the same sentence rise before each decisive moment? Why does tomorrow resemble the expectation you rehearsed yesterday? Because the thread is familiar. Your subconscious does not pause to debate every assumption. It receives what is repeatedly accepted, especially when imagery, feeling, and trust bring that assumption to life. Murphy makes this practical. The conscious mind can impress a new direction upon the subconscious, not through desperate chanting, and not through words your whole body rejects, but through repeated acceptance joined with feeling. Cold words barely enter. A sentence becomes formative when you inhabit it. An inner image becomes influential when you feel yourself standing inside its meaning rather than watching it from a distance. Repetition draws it through. This is why the moments before sleep carry such quiet importance. The conscious guard softens, the day loosens its grip, and the subconscious becomes more receptive to what you repeatedly present. Choose gently there. You do not need to command the universe from your pillow. You need only stop feeding the old pattern, as though fear has earned the final word. Let the body soften. Then present one simple assumption that carries the direction you choose. Feel its truth without strain, receive it with gratitude, and release it rather than digging it up through anxious inspection. Trust completes the stitch. Murphy's teaching is not a demand to pretend. It is an invitation to rehearse inwardly what fear has prevented you from accepting outwardly. Fear rehearses loss. Trust rehearses participation. The subconscious learns from both. Florence Scovel Shinn brings the thread into speech. Your spoken language is not idle decoration. It reveals the faith, expectation, and direction you are already practicing. Words expose the pattern. Listen closely to the sentences you use when nothing seems important. This always happens. I can never recover. Something will go wrong. Each sentence pulls thread. You may call it realism, but repetition makes it instruction. The subconscious hears the emotional certainty beneath your phrasing and accepts the direction you continually provide. Your word becomes practical faith. Shinn's insight is not that language performs empty magic. It is that speech gathers attention, expectation, and feeling into a chosen movement. The fearful sentence contracts. The deliberate sentence opens. Revise one today. Do not leap from "I am doomed" to a phrase so grand that your nervous system refuses it. Choose language that is honest, spacious, and directional. This fear is present, but it is not my authority. That sentence changes your posture without denying your experience. Truth can breathe. Then notice the first thread available to you. Perhaps fear rises before a conversation, an application, a boundary, a medical appointment, or an ordinary act of self-respect. Observe it without obedience. You do not need to destroy the fear. Destruction keeps your attention trapped in battle. Observation lets you feel the thread without weaving it into the next action. Fear may speak. It does not decide. Revise the sentence that follows. Instead of saying, "I cannot handle what comes," say, "I can meet the next moment with presence." Keep it believable. Now rehearse the embodied state. Unclench the jaw, lower the shoulders, breathe without forcing, and let your body experience a few seconds without submitting to the predicted catastrophe. The body is listening. This is not performance. It is a new assumption receiving texture through sensation. Feeling gives the chosen thread weight. Then complete one congruent action. Send the message, make the appointment, turn off the noise, tell the truth, open the document, or rest without secretly sentencing yourself for resting. Action tightens the weave. One action may appear too small to change a life. That appearance protects the old pattern because fear wants transformation to seem so enormous that you postpone your participation. Small is not powerless. Your life already proves this. Repeated moments created habits. Habits shaped expectation. Expectation guided decisions, and decisions produced the visible pattern around you. The same law can serve awareness. You are not required to become someone who controls all reality. That fantasy is merely fear wearing ceremonial clothing, still desperate to guarantee that nothing uncertain can touch you. Control demands certainty. Authorship chooses direction. There is freedom here. You can acknowledge illness without making despair your identity. You can name injustice without weaving helplessness into every response. You can honor trauma without granting it permanent authority over your future. The wound has a history. It does not own tomorrow. This is mature responsibility. You reclaim participation without accusing yourself of causing everything. You recognize inner causation without denying outer conditions. You choose your thread while remaining honest about the fabric already placed in your hands. That honesty strengthens you. You are the weaver of a consciously inhabited life, not the ruler of every event, and not the guilty cause of every sorrow, but the living presence who decides what fear is permitted to author next. The crown is attention. Where attention rests repeatedly, the thread follows. What attention accepts as final begins to organize speech, emotion, posture, and action around itself, so guard it tenderly. Right now, an ordinary moment is waiting. It may contain no sign, no surge of inspiration, and no dramatic proof that your inner direction matters. Use it anyway. Notice one fear. Withdraw obedience. Speak one truer sentence, inhabit one steadier feeling, and complete one action that agrees with the life you are willing to enter. The pattern changes there. Nothing outside you needs to applaud. The subconscious learns through what you return to, and every deliberate return places another thread beyond the reach of unconscious fear. This is your invitation. Choose the next thread with care, weaver, because the life awaiting you begins in the moment you no longer let fear choose it for you. The signal was never outside you. It was moving through you. Every fear rehearsed in silence became a frequency. Every belief repeated beneath awareness became a broadcast. And your life, faithful receiver that it is, answered with echoes. But now you hear it. Now you can choose. You are no longer the receiver captured by an unconscious broadcast. You are the instrument that recognizes its own note, the witness who refocuses perception, the architect who understands inner causation, the careful sower of living words. You are the navigator, the keeper, the reader of reflected belief. You have mapped the roads that once seemed accidental. You have entered the forge and shaped an inner state by choice. You have learned to travel from within, and now you are the weaver of a consciously inhabited life. Say it inwardly. I am the weaver, I am the signal, I am the one who chooses what continues through me. You and I are one in this recognition. What is repeated becomes familiar, what is nourished grows stronger, and what is witnessed clearly can finally be changed. The warning has served its purpose. Do not fear your subconscious. Teach it. Do not curse the pattern, interrupt it. Do not tear at yesterday's fabric. Choose the next thread, one thought, one word, one response. That is how the weave changes. The final chapter has ended, but your hands are still upon the loom. The next strand will not be placed by this voice. It will be placed by the attention you carry into your next conversation, your next silence, your next decision. So leave the audio, enter your life. If you subscribe, let it be a pact, not with a channel, but with the frequency you have chosen to remember. If you comment, let your words become a signature. Declare the broadcast you now consent to carry. Name the life you are willing to weave. The signal is yours. The thread is waiting, your hands already know. Choose the frequency. Place the next strand. The first movement is already passing through you.